5+1 group with Iran on the Islamic Republic's nuclear ambitions hasn't brought any breakthrough, but there has been agreement to hold a second round of talks here in Moscow in June. Western envoys offered Iran much-needed aircraft maintenance and nuclear safety cooperation in return for Tehran halting higher-grade nuclear enrichment. Now, Iran offered UN inspectors visits to a military complex that's suspected of carrying out nuclear tests, but the West has refused to budge over imminent new sanctions that will hit oil exports, the country's main source of income, of course. Iran says more restrictions won't make it yield on its nuclear programme, which it claims still is only for peaceful energy and research purposes. Let's get more on this from political consultant Daniel Wagner. He's head of the advisory firm Country Risk Solutions. He's on the line from New York tonight. Very good to see you. So then, Daniel, no solution again on Iran's nuclear issue. The talks continue. Next time they're in Moscow, do you think Tehran will be able to avoid an impending set of sanctions by July and will open up its facilities for inspection in return for easing of those Western-led measures against it?
It seems unlikely for a variety of reasons, Kevin. You know, I look at Iran and the West as sort of like Mars versus Venus. They want completely different things. Even if the West was inclined to ease the sanctions that are proposed for July, they can't simply turn off the spigot, and that's exactly what Iran wants. Iran's not going to get what it wants. Probably the West isn't going to get what it wants either. There are some optimists out there about this process. I don't happen to be one of them.
How much are the technical demands of Western nations on Tehran actually about nuclear safety, or are they more about controlling the country politically and keeping it in sanctions straitjackets?
Well, there are a number of dynamics going on here. On the one hand, there's the supreme leader in Iran who has said that the development of nuclear weapons is not in Iran's interest and is forbidden, has issued a fatwa. But, you know, fatwas are actually temporary sometimes, and they don't necessarily mean what people in the West might think they mean. And if it's not permanent, it doesn't mean much to the West. In the West, I think what the West and Israel are looking for is something which Iran is simply not going to give them. They're looking for a complete cessation of enrichment. They're looking for a reversal of the process that has gone on for more than a decade now. I just don't see how this is going to happen. I wish I was wrong. I would like to be able to say that I see a meeting of the minds here. But what I am more inclined to say is that Iran is using this negotiation process, as they have used other negotiation processes, to string along the process and further their own nuclear ambitions.
And of course, sanctions on Iran not only hit Iran, they also hit neighbouring nations pretty hard as well, especially those that buy oil from it. Now, if Iran does get further isolated by the West, what impact is that going to have on the region? And further afield, thinking about China and India.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Kevin. There are going to be some knock-on effects long-term as a result of this. But the nations that are largely affected are already finding ways to work around it. You look at India, for example. India is starting to find alternative sources of oil, and previously they said they would have a difficult time doing that. Fortunately, there's plenty of oil in the world markets, and those nations that need to find alternative sources of oil are likely to be able to do so, and those nations that have become accustomed to working with the Iranian central bank will find other ways to do business with Iran if that's what they need to do.
Really quickly, is it going to put the costs up for everyone else of oil?
My view is that the only way that the costs of oil are really going to skyrocket is if there is, in fact, an attack on Iran. And that cost is likely to be short-term in nature, although perhaps severe. Probably what would happen, for instance, if Israel attacked Iran, is that the price would spike perhaps 20–25%. I don't think it would stay there because I don't think that Iran is capable of sustaining opposition to an attack for a very long period of time. They would simply be overwhelmed. The markets would be rattled initially, but would probably calm down after a couple of weeks.
Gotcha. Political consultant Daniel Wagner, thanks for your thoughts on the programme tonight. Much appreciated.